Slow and steady. Hey! And we've got one on. It's an odd one for me. As a Northwest born and bred lad, I spent all of my time wanting to travel south for my fishing. Absolute creature of a car and a Northwest 40 pounder. So I decided that I'd get down this session a day before Stephen. I decided I'd arrive on the Monday, just to give me plenty of time to try and find him and to try and get on in between the midweekers turning up and the weekend anglers leaving. I turned up on Monday around lunchtime and actually spent 6 hours walking around this lake non-stop. It's just short of a mile round probably by the time you've gone up through all the car parks and that. And I just lapped and lapped and lapped and lapped, but there was nothing really to go off. So I decided to go in a peg that got form for me in the kind of weather we were in. I was umming and ahhing about going on the end of the wind, over on like the Kellett Bank as it were, but with how ferocious the weather already was on Monday and how bad it was due to get, I decided that Island 4 would probably be my best port of call. A peg that I knew spots in, a lovely little gravel hump and a nice deep hole. So a few rods were deployed on them with plenty of bait in a hope that come morning when Stephen arrived, at bite time, we'd have had an opportunity. So I don't know how well you can hear me with the wind and the horrendous weather, but we might be starting this film with a carp on. Now I got down here yesterday and I spent a little bit of time, I spent 5 hours in total lapping the lake. I got here at lunchtime. I didn't actually get in the swim till 6 p.m. and I went in next door and a couple of rods are still out in there. It's only, 10 yards away, if that. But this morning I've been watching them showing out here at range and I've just chucked a bag on it and I've walked up to meet Stephen just next door, and while I'm up there I've had a real funny occurrence. This could be an eel, if I'm honest with you, that's just weeded me up. Real funny occurrence, just bobbins bounced up and down a couple of times. It's actually knocked the bobbin off. I lifted into it and it's just arced over in the weed. 24 hours with nothing, and then the cameraman turns up, my lucky charm, and Stephen's popped up and it's gone straight away. So I don't make a picture of it this time. There we go. Welcome to Clearwater Fisheries, Keir Lake. 48-hour film. Hopefully catching a few more of them. The bobbin just nodded ever so gently, at like a couple of mil of movement up and down, and it didn't even indicate on the RX, it was just nodding away, and Stephen stood there and he went, something's not right there, and I said the same, I was like, there's got to be something on it, and I picked it up expecting to be met by a tench, and as I lifted into that rod, the rod hooped over with it locked up in the weed, and I got it moving. I still thought it was a tench. Then I got it moving a bit more and I went, it could be an eel. And then I got it close in and realised it was a carp. And not a bad one as well. Obviously that 20 pounder to start the session with, a really good way to start the session. Welcome to Clearwater Fisheries, Keir Lake. We're down here for a couple of days to make a film, and as the cameraman Stephen has walked into the swim this morning, the rod's rattled off and we have got one in the net. Opportunistic, quick, solid bag on some showers, and it's rattled off with what looks to be a lovely 20 pounder. So for now, I'm going to get this bag straight back out where they are, and then we'll get that one out, have a look here, and I'll tell you what we're going to be doing here. With that fish landed, I was still considering a move massively. The fish was showing like crazy over in peg 6 on the far side in the wind. And I was saying to Stephen, I'm really sorry, but we're going to have to go and get in the teeth of this cold wind and go and have a go for them. But with that being said, I did feel like there could be a chance on the bottom bait rods that were in my main swim on the spot I was fishing. The fish were showing well past it, but I decided to put a couple of spoms out on here that can work really well. A couple of spoms at bite time will get you a quicker bite a lot of the time, and I've found it on a lot of venues over the years.
So I fired out maybe 2 or 3 spoms. Me and Stephen went back to get the first fish on the bank, and at that moment, that rod on the baited spot rattled off with that lovely second 20 pounder. And that was it. My decision was made that I was going to stay put in Island 4. So, Stephen has just had to sort out the fish that I've just had, because we had it on the mat. I was about to lift it up and one of the other rods has rattled off, and I was just saying to Stephen, we are going to make a move, I think. But this spot has been doing me bites at about 11 o'clock and we're 10 past 11 now, and true to form, it's rattled off and it looks like we've got a carp stuck in the back of a big ball of weed here. Slow and steady. Hey! Oh, if you told me this morning that I was going to have 2 bites, I'd have told you were mad. It wasn't looking great, but it just shows how quick it can change around. So we've not even done the intro yet, and we've got 2 in the net. So this one's going to get retained up. I'm not going to put the rods back out. I'm going to go and we'll film that first one I had, show you all about it. Then we'll get this one out that looks, underneath all that weed, like another nice chunky little 20 pounder. Well, as I just said, welcome to Clearwater Fisheries Clearlake, and what a way to start. I got down here yesterday, knowing Stephen was coming today, so I got down yesterday and I spent 6 hours walking around this lake looking for him. And I'll be honest, this morning I thought I'd picked the wrong place. The fish was showing a peg down to the left and quite long, and I've come in here, I've fired a bag out, and just as Stephen's turned up, he's walked into the swim and the rod's gone. So he's filmed it on his phone, a bit chaotic, but a lovely 22 pounder to start with. Not one of the big ones in this lake, and we're going to be talking about a few of the big ones that are in here that I've been lucky enough to catch this season through this film, and hopefully we'll be putting one of them on the bank. But then, to add chaos to the drama, when I got this fish out, we had it on the mat, we've just been trying to film this piece, my other rod's ripped off. I did say I was expecting a bite around 11 AM, and we're just past that now, and that rod's ripped off with another lovely mid to upper double that's in the net. So we're gonna slip back this lovely 20 pounder, get that one out, and then you might think I'm bonkers, but I'm gonna probably wrap everything up and make a move, because the fish are showing a little bit out of my water. So let's get this one back, get that one out, and then, before this rain comes back in, let's get round that other side on the teeth of the wind. Well, there we go, the second one of this morning's brace. Bit bigger than I thought it was. It's a scraper 20, probably because it's a bit of a short, chunky and dumpy one, kind of like its captor. An absolutely lovely fish though, all the same. It's not one of the mega commons that we're here for, but you know what? When you're getting bites in this weather, when the lake's fishing slow, you cannot complain, can you? I'm going to pop this back, and I am now really umming and ahhing about that move. I have got a bucket in round the other side. I'm probably going to pack some gear down so that I can move quickly in a moment, spend another half an hour having a look at something. If I see another few showing in that area, we'll be on our toes. If not, another load of bait, a couple of rods back out on these spots. And I'll be honest, I think we'll probably get another one from round here, but absolutely mega, made up with it. Get it back. That water's getting cold now, so my hands are a bit numb. Make a brew. Oh, yeah, she wants to go. Slip her away. Perfect. You might be wondering what on earth I'm doing, getting the rod back out and spomming again, when I've said I was definitely going to move. Well, it was a loose definitely, because I've changed my mind again. Couple of big reasons. In the time that we were sorting that fish out, we had to film a few other bits and pieces, and Stephen getting his camera gear all together and everything. The fish have actually stopped showing on the far side. Now this wind is howling over there. We've got 50-mile-an-hour gusts. It's fairly calm stood here on the island where we are now, sort of in the middle of the lake, but on the back of the wind, as it were. Over there, it's brutal. We are still seeing the odd one, but we're seeing small fish over there. I've had a couple now, haven't I? And this lake has got some really special big fishing that we are going to talk about a little bit in this film, but also hopefully we can manage to trip one of them up. And I just don't think they're going to be on the end of that wind off seeing what we've seen over there. So I'm going to give this spot that I've just had that bite off 5, maybe 6 spoms. I've just got the rigs back out there, and then we're going to have a cup of tea and run through sort of what I'm doing, what I did yesterday before Stephen got here, and what the plan's going to be for the next 24 hours, 48 hours or so. So bait wise, I'm doing something a little bit different to what I'd normally do on here this week. Nothing that's setting the world on fire, but I normally use quite a lot of crumb. But with this big wind, I'll be honest, I think most of it won't be getting down on the spot, so I am putting out more whole boilie. Still got the pellet and stuff in there, but we'll run through the bait mix that I'm using properly a little bit further on, because it's something that everywhere I take it, it works, and it's so simple. Everyone's trying to get these crazy spod mixes, but you really don't need to. As long as you've got something they want to eat and you factor in the depth of the water and the weather, like I am doing now with the mix, it works really well. So yeah, rest of the bucket here, I'm probably going to put the whole thing in, and then when I do make up another batch later on, we'll run you through the exact components that are in that bait mix. Now on that day, through Tuesday, the weather and the conditions on the lake changed massively. First of all, the weather fronts were crazy. One moment it was freezing cold, you couldn't get enough layers on like today. And then the next moment, we were sat in shorts and t-shirts almost. We were sweating away in our t-shirts, sat in the bivvy doorways. Then you'd get a massive load of rain come through and the temperature would drop again, the wind would pick up, and it was really chopping and changing. One minute it's westerly, then it's northwesterly. And then to add to that, a load of anglers turned up. Now I knew a few friends were coming down. They'd said they were going to pop down and do the night to have a little bit of a social on the second evening. But as well, a load of other anglers turned up, as I expected them to, the midweek bunch, and we ended up with about 11 anglers on the lake. And I'll be honest, a few things really do affect this lake. One's weather. The fish have certain areas that they spend time on, like on most lakes, when it's sunny or when there's a big wind or when it's raining. They have certain areas of the lake they like for different pressure systems and different wind systems. But when it was chopping and changing so much like that, I feel like it just split the fish up everywhere. And all of a sudden we just stopped seeing them. It went really quiet. I think when you can pack that with all the angling pressure that came on, especially people setting up in the teeth of that wind on the far side, I was sure the fish would get pushed towards me still, but I just couldn't see again another opportunity coming with the changes in weather. I've said that there's a lot of nuisance fish and eels in here, and I've seen loads of different ways that people go about avoiding nuisance fish or avoiding eels or avoiding crays, being able to take your hook baits off. I've tried all sorts over the years, and to be honest, this has been, in my opinion, the only way to actually floss a bait on, but the best way for it. So what I'm doing, I'm starting with a piece of floss, and I'm using an unwaxed floss. So a lot of the bait flosses on the market are waxed, and what that does is it helps them bind together, but I don't want that, and you'll see why in a moment. Got my hook bait there already. Just going to pop that on. The other thing I see people do all the time, struggling with a little piece of floss, it's a couple of quid a spool, just take off enough to be able to work with it. I'm going to pull that on too far onto the swivel. Then I'm going to take my bait stop, and instead of putting it between those two bits of floss and tying them off, what I'll actually do is I'll separate one of the pieces of floss with the bait stop itself or with a needle into multiple strands, and I'll trap the bait stop within that piece of floss. From there, I can then simply tie a couple of overhand knots, and it's not just locking the knot on top of the bait stop, it's actually locking the bait stop within the fibres of the bait floss. So 2 overhand knots, I know some people blob it, but for me, I'm just terrified of the smell that plastic's leaving on your bait when there's a big blob there. I'll cut those off really tiny and tight, nip off that bait stop, and I'll just take my lighter. Like I say, I don't like blobbing, but I know I'm gonna have to for a tiny bit here. I'll just give it just a touch. And by doing that, the bait stops on, it can't pull out. It's inside the knot itself. So by having it like that, you know that everything's perfect, everything's tidy. The fish aren't gonna be able to pull it off and you're gonna be fishing still. Unless they're whittling your baits down like they have been doing, like with this one, but otherwise, you know you're still fishing. I'm gonna get these out in the pond anyway, get that bucket of bait in, and we'll see. I don't know, I'm confident of a bite tomorrow around the same time, but it's doing the odd night bite now. See what we can do. It's certainly calming down a little bit now. That wind has definitely dropped off. I'm just stood to the right of the swim having a look out off this island towards a couple of the other ones, seeing if anything's showing on the back of that wind, but I'll be honest, it's all gone a little bit quiet. Next door, someone's moved in and they have had one of the original commons, so I might be right that those big ones are sat on the back of the wind. I might not be. We'll have to wait and find out. For now though, I'm gonna enjoy the rest of this evening, watch the daylight burn away with Stephen over a cup of tea, make some food, and fingers crossed we'll be up in the night with a carp. If we don't know, then we'll see you first thing in the morning to try and make something happen. It's morning and no carp to report. You might be seeing I'm looking rather tired, but that's just 'cause I've been kept up all night with liners and what I think's probably been the eels playing with my hook baits. Now, I've just wound all the rods in to refresh them and re-chuck them out. It might seem crazy doing it like prime time, sun's coming up, bite time, but I can tell you on here, for me, this has been a really successful tactic. And since I've done it on here, I've done it on a lot of other waters and it's worked really well for me. Just at that first light bite time, if you've not had a bite in that first half an hour of light, I get some fresh rigs done, I wrap them back up and I get them straight back out. I mean, let's be honest, if you, at these ranges especially, it's 3 plops to get those rigs back out there. 4 or 5 spoms over the top, and we're just going to try and induce something into happening. Those fish are still sitting just out past me, showing at probably 20 wraps that you can't fish from this swim because of a series of humps and bumps out in front of you that would cut you off if you fished out past them. So yeah, we'll re-chuck this one, the others are out there, this one's last, have a cup of tea, couple of spoms over each rod, and hopefully 10 AM, one of them will be ripping off again. As we came out of that night and into the next morning, I was quite disappointed, to be honest, when I woke up at first light and the lake just looked lifeless. There was all these people on the far side now, None of them had had anything to my knowledge, a few phone calls to friends and stuff to see what they'd had, and everyone was saying the same. The lake had just gone dead. From them going crazy the day before and me having that real fast bite on a solid bag and then having a bite straight after putting bait in, it just seemed horrendously dead, and I was really questioning my decision on what peg choice I'd made at that point. You know, I was reeling about needing to move. I was really frustrated, and again through the day, me and Stephen spent most of the day sat there watching, staring. The binos were out constantly, just hoping to see something.
Well, as always, especially up here kind of on the edge of Cumbria and towards the Lake District and everything, the weatherman is wrong. He said it was going to be raining all day. He said there was going to be a bit more northerly in this wind than there has been, and it's not done. Now, I'm not making excuses as to why I've not caught, but I am trying to make a plan of what to do. Now, I always have with me one of these little Coram Method Mix bait tubs in my bag with a bag mix in it, a few leaders and bags in the top compartment there. So what I'm doing is I'm tying a bag up to try a different spot. Now, where the fish are showing, it is still past me, and I don't really want to be putting a rig there because of the humps and bumps that are between me and there. I could potentially go around the far side and fish it, but I have had a little lead around in the area and it's very weedy where they were showing. However, if you come this way, probably by 10 yards, it is, you know, it's not too far, but it is a fair distance away. As you come back, there's a lovely gravel hump, and it comes right up to a couple of foot off the surface in sort of 7 or 8 foot of water. So, solid bag, gonna tie it up. Right hand rod's gonna come in that deep hole because it's not done anything. That's the one rod that I've had a few liners on, but I've not had a bite on it. And I'm gonna fire this bag up on top of that plateau. This sunshine's really warm now, to be honest. And I feel like we're sort of on the back of the wind. We're in the sun. There's a good chance I'm going to be up in the water. There's a good chance I'm going to be able to nick a bite off the top of that plateau. I know it does have form in this kind of weather up on top of that plateau, so we'll have to see. Anyway, I'm going to get this bag finished off, get out on the spot. A friend of mine's doing a lap around the lake now. If he sees anything worth going on to, I'm sure he'll let me know. But if not, yeah, we'll stay put. A little bit more bait, fresh bags out, like I say, on top of this hump. Keep trying to ring the changes till something happens. You've got to be reactive when it's like this. There's no point sitting here with rods on the bottom that aren't producing. So we're just coming into the afternoon now, and nothing's really happening, and it's hitting the point where I'm either considering a move or I'm definitely going to be redoing the rods. So I've just tied up a fresh hook link. I just wanted to run you through how I tie it. Now, it does just look like a normal slip D, but there's a couple of little twists that I do that make it, for me, a much more effective rig. So to start with, I take around 12 inches of the outline fluorocarbon in 30 pounds and I cut that off. I then take some 20-pound Coram smokescreen braid and I use a loop tire tool to tie a figure of 8. Now I find with these loop tire tools that the large side of most of the Match Brands loop tire tools ties the perfect size figure of 8 for this rig, and it's consistent. That's the main thing. That loop is the same size every time, so I always use them for it. I tie that loop, then I attach the short braided section with the loop to the fluorocarbon using an Albright knot, and I tie that so that it's a real short distance between the knot of the loop and the knot onto the fluorocarbon itself. After this, I grab a size 4 Armorock wide gape hook that I've lovingly sharpened up,
and I pop the loop of the braid through the front of the eye towards the back of the hook before pulling the small figure of 8 knot that I've tied through the hook eye. This can take a little bit of teasing, but once you've pulled it through, it'll lock in place on the other side, and I'll explain why that's so important in a moment. I take a hook ring swivel, I slide that onto the loop, and I then pass the hook point itself through the loop, attaching it almost multi-rig style onto the hook. After this, I just take a centimetre or so of the outline shrink tubing, I slide that down, and then I finish the rig by tying a loop at the top end, just a figure of 8, and I actually use one of the large Ronnie sleeves as my kicker, my anti-tangle sleeve. The whole rig then gets dumped into the kettle. I don't mess about trying to steam the hook link straight and the shrink tube separately. I think sometimes you get that lick of a flame coming up the side of the kettle and it can catch your hook link and damage it. So everything goes in there, I steam it off, and then I curve the shrink tube in quite aggressively. What you'll notice is I have a really small gap between the supple part, that's where the shrink tube is, and the knot itself on the Albright. Now this does take a little bit of practice to get that Albright knot really tight, but by doing that it almost makes it like a Ronnie or a spinner where there's hardly any supple element to the rig, but I think this acts a lot faster than a Ronnie or a spinner because of that real supple piece of braid there. Onto that, I'll finish it off by attaching my hook bait. In this case I've got a Sea Monster wafter and one of the corns on top, and then I attach my bait stop. And to do that, through the floss, I use an unwaxed floss. I actually push the bait stop through one of the strands of floss before tying it down with a couple of overhand knots. This does two things. First of all, it makes it a lot harder for that bait stop to be removed by any nuisance fish like the eels or the rudd that are in the swim. And the other thing is, it means that I can tie a couple of overhand knots and I don't have to blob it. I used to be a big believer in blobbing all my hook baits on, but the more and more I've done it, for me, there's a smell there when you blob any plastic, and I just don't like that scent being there on my hook baits. You know, I'm trying not to let them know that I'm fishing for them, and I don't want a big black blob of smelly plastic on top of the hook bait. But that's it, that's a rig that probably for the last 12, 18 months or so now I've been using pretty much exclusively for all of my bottom bait and wafter fishing. By having that knot trapped on the opposite side of the eye, it means that I can put sticks on, I can cast as hard as I want with the biggest baits that I want, with nuggets on, and the slip D loop will never slide down like it would do if you'd done it the conventional way by having just a loop coming off of your fluorocarbon. The other big bonus is it leaves a single strand of braid coming out of the eye of the hook without having to do a whipping knot, and by doing that it makes it so much more supple and reactive. Definitely one that I'd recommend giving a go, and I can honestly say I've never used a rig that's been quite as effective as this for me. I was always a big bottom bait rig user. I changed onto this. I didn't like the way that the rig previously worked, and I tweaked and changed, and kind of with this loop it came about by accident, but it's ended up being a really effective way of fishing a slip D for me, and one that I definitely recommend you try. Around sort of mid-afternoon, I started seeing a small, real short window of fish showing straight across from me again, out in Peg 6. Stephen had actually just gone round doing a lap with the cameras to get some footage, and these fish started showing really close into 6 again where we'd seen them the day before. And at that point I was feeling like an idiot for not moving earlier, if I'm honest. I was frustrated and I was annoyed to the point where I said to Stephen, look, I'm just going to start packing up from over here now before you get round. I need to move on to them fish. You know, bucket the swim and I'll be there as fast as I can. It's worth mentioning that before that, the chap who'd gone in Island 3 the night before, he'd had a few fish in the peg next door to me, and I was contemplating moving into there. I actually had a bucket in there, kind of waiting out bite time in Island 4, hoping to move into Island 3 for the evening. That's around the time that he had his bites. But I was just convinced, you know, these fish have now moved into 6. They're there in numbers, massive numbers. The amount of fish that showed in just that short window told me everything I needed to know. But while I was waiting for Stephen, I was kind of frustratingly marching around the peg, trying to pack stuff away, but getting angry at it as I'm going, I'm trying too quick. I thought I'd just have a quick look through the bushes to my right. I actually went to the bathroom through the bushes to my right, and as I'm stood there, I saw one cruise past in this area between this bank and the island. And as that one cruise past, I thought, you know what? I've got a solid bag rod there ready to go. I've got some bags tied, should I say. I'll loop it on, the one that I've been putting on top of the plateau, and I'll fire it onto the spot that I fish out of Peg 11 where we've moved into. And I put the rod onto that spot, still, I don't know, not really feeling it, but it's the best I could do, you know. For that half an hour while I waited for Stephen to come back round, it had made sense to try and find an opportunity that might work. Stephen came round to the swim, and he'd secured Peg 6 for me. I'd taken my bucket out of Island 3, and most of the gear was on the barrow. I was actually at the point of just starting to wind in the second rod that was out on the baited spot, and Stephen got the camera, asked me just to do a little piece of the camera, and I'm glad he did, because if I'm honest, otherwise all those rods would have been packed away and I'd have been off the island before he got round to me. If there is one thing that I despise when I'm stood the other side of that camera filming, it's when an angler starts doing stuff when I'm not in the swim. And I've just done it to Stephen. He's gone doing a lap around the lake, filming some stuff, and he saw a couple show over on the far side in Peg 6. It kind of prompted me to spend a bit of time stood looking, and I've seen another couple over there. So there's no point sitting still and not moving. I know I said I wanted to sit on the back of the wind potentially for a big one, but a few of them fish I've seen were good fish. So I've got one rod left to wind in. These two are already done. And then it'll be get this barrow around to the van, get Stephen's stuff around to the van, drive around the other side, and go set up on the teeth of this wind before the weather comes back in again. Fingers crossed it's going to be the right move, because it just ain't happening here. But because of that, I packed away the first rod, and I fumbled and stumbled a couple of times telling you guys what I was going to be doing. That meant there was a few outtakes, took a little bit longer than expected. And then my landing net handler actually kind of got stuck together where I put it together with gritting the day before. So me and Stephen are trying to separate that, and I've still got this one rod out. And as the landing net handles popped apart, the rod's gone into absolute meltdown, like screaming. It took me a minute to register because my receiver was actually folded up in my bed chair, ready for the move. And then it clicked when I could hear the clutch going. I've gone running through the bushes, and I'm shouting back to Stephen, set the net back up, set the net back up. And he's come bundling through with a camera first. I'm going, why have you not got the net with you? He's going, I'll just film it for a minute. I've just done that piece at the barrow, packing up. And I said about anglers doing stuff when the cameraman's not there. And I put a rod off the end of this island because I saw one cruise through. And I mean 10 seconds away from walking through these bushes to wind it in, my bed chair's just started screaming at me because that's where my receiver is. And we've got one on. So unexpected this. I did see a couple of fish in here, and while I'm playing this, I've now just seen another 3. And the spot I've had this bite off is a spot I fish out of Peg 11 that's straight across the other side from here. And I think if we get another one, if we get this one in, I know where I'm moving. And that'll be straight round there. I've changed my mind on 6 about 10 times. When I got here, that's the peg I wanted. I didn't go in there because of the wind. I've changed my mind twice to go in there. Just too far, but if I step here, I'm into about 4 foot of water straight away, so I'll try and avoid it. Go on then! I can tell you now, I did not see where that bite was coming from, and the smile on my face might give it away, but I'm absolutely chuffed with that. And it popped up just in front of me, and it was a lovely fish, and it went into the net. A little bit of a struggle over the top of them reeds, that 8 foot handle, just trying to get as far as I could, and eventually it went in. I've made up 30 pounder. Like, yeah, if I'd come on this session and said I was going to have 3, and one of them would be a 30 for the cameras, I'd have been more than happy with that. So for that to have happened was great. how's about that? £30 and 4 ounces, an absolutely belting linear. One of the fish, I think this one's one that's called the Big Lin. It has gone bigger in the past, but after spawning, still being a 30, I am very happy with that one. Especially when I wasn't meant to be here. I was very ready to move. It was only because Stephen asked me to do the talking bit of the Barra. I was itchy feet and about to run off the island. So a big thank you for Stephen making me stay around for a few more minutes, because yeah, that rod wouldn't have ripped off. Properly nice fish, this one. And one that I've seen on the 30s board, and one that I definitely wanted to catch. So it's always nice to tick off one of the mini targets, hopefully tonight, one of the main targets. Well, that's the other side, just as pretty as the side you've just seen. Thank you very much, big girl. Properly happy with that one. 30 pounders this far up north, who'd have thought it, eh? Thank you very much. Now, with that in mind, while I was playing that fish, I actually saw quite a few fish show closer into this bank. And obviously at that moment, I did decide that I was still moving. So we got that fish on the bank, we filmed it, slipped it back, and then chasing the light and trying to beat darkness as it was creeping in, we loaded all the gear on the barras and we pushed round to this side of the lake. And I can tell you now, that push round here was actually pretty damn easy when you know that you're coming onto a load of carp that are showing. It's absolute chaos at the moment in the swim. Me and Stephen have just rolled in here, and just out in front of us is some really deep water. And I wasn't planning on fishing that, but as we've walked in the swim, a proper one's just shown right close in on the edge of that deep water, and there's loads of fizz. So, as fast as I can, I've got no solid bags tied, so I'm going to go with my absolute next best thing, and that's forgotten tactic really, the old PVA stick. I always have a bag of like ready to go stick mix, the matching stuff to my boilie as well, the Sea Monster one in my bag. But yeah, one of them, it's quite a big stick. I normally use them like the length of the tip of my pinky, but one of them, the rig that I showed you, I'll just hook that on, fire it out, quick bite. Ooh, I wouldn't mind one. Right, so we're in the swim. We're coming here, they're showing absolutely everywhere. But the spot that I had that bite off when I was fishing from the island is the spot that I fish out of this peg, like I said. So I've just got 2 rigs on it. I'm getting a little bit of bait in, I'm not putting too much in. Probably 15 Midi-X spoms over that one. And then I'll put another rod on another spot that Harry's mentioned to me. See if tonight we can't make it happen. I don't think it'll be in the night, but certainly if the weather's the same tomorrow, afternoon bite, quite promising. While we're waiting for it to warm up a little bit on this incredibly autumnal morning, it's absolutely freezing with that mist rolling off the lake and everything. I thought I'd take a moment to run you through kind of the story of this place and what's been going on this spring and summer, and obviously now we're just creeping into the autumn months. So this is my first year on here on the Syndicate Lake at Clearwater Fisheries, Keir Lake. And it's an odd one for me. As a Northwest born and bred lad, I spent all of my time wanting to travel south for my fishing. And then oddly, when I moved south, I started travelling north again, some 40 miles to Yateley from my home base in Winchester. And it was an unusual one to be travelling north. And then I moved back up north, and somehow I found myself travelling 30 miles north again, right the way up to the brink of Cumbria. We're literally, I don't know, 10 minutes away on the motorway from being in the edge of the Lake District. But this place has got some unbelievable carp in it. It's got 37 different 30-pounders in now. The big one's done 50. It's got a couple of commons that do 40. It's just unbelievable. So I started out on it in April, really excited, but expecting to struggle a little bit at the beginning, to be honest. And I got quite lucky straight off the bat. On my first session, actually, I managed a couple of fish, only stockies, but a great start to any campaign on a water. My fishing was a little bit sporadic through those early months before they spawned, here and there, but I did manage a few nice fish along the way. I actually had one of the other name ones out of this peg that was a half moon mirror just before spawning, along with another few stockies and bits and pieces through that beginning period. But I'd started to feel like I was building momentum and I was getting a good idea of the lake. And it was just after spawning, all the other big ones had been out, but Mooney hadn't, the big mirror. And I knew she was due, and I found her feeding up in one of the bays. She was absolutely troughing, to be honest, and I fluffed it. I tried to get a rig in place and I spooked her. But with kind of the knowledge that she's definitely eating and she's having it, I really hurriedly got myself back here the week later. And I spent a long time that session walking and lapping and walking and lapping till I found some fish. And I ended up coming onto the island, and as I came on, out the corner of my eye, I saw a very big fish show. Actually, between the peg that we were in and the peg next door, peg 3. I caught this fish out the corner of my eye showing. I knew it was a big one, and I ran round into peg 4, and you're that little bit higher up in that peg, and I'm having a look out, and I saw it come past, big old shadow, and I knew that's got to be the big girl. That has to be the big girl. So I felt like I've missed an opportunity the week before, and now I've found her really quick this week. And I'll be honest, I was telling members I'm going to have her tonight. Like, I was dead set that I was going to have her. And then when I went back to go get my gear, I walked into Island 3 and I actually saw her shuffle straight out, right off the back of the spot. Like, clean out the water. Couldn't have been more blatant. I was looking straight at it. It was the big girl. So I ran up to the van, I got the barrow, I loaded it up, and I came flying round, and the lake was really busy at that point, with guys coming on and off, and I had quite a few people coming to swim. And like I say, I said to them all, I was like, oh, I'm going to have a few in here, and I've seen Mooney, I'm really confident of having her. She's due out, it's going to happen, it's got to happen. People say that they talk them onto the bank, but honestly, I don't think I could have talked it onto the bank anymore. That next morning, in fact, after I got here that night, I had a stockie, and I filmed the stockie, and then I filmed myself on my phone saying, I've just had a real pretty one, The next bite I have is going to be a big one, I'm sure of it, and if it is, it's going to be Mooney.
Okay, so you are greeting me mid-session. I came on yesterday after work. I'm up on Keir Lake at Clearwater Fisheries on my syndicate, and yeah, I turned up yesterday evening, and where I wanted to get on, the fish were piled up on the end of this wind that's howling off my back straight down to the other side of the lake. But the fish in there, although they've been showing really short in those swims, they've been getting pushed out when guys have been catching, and because that bank's quite busy, I decided to come around here and fish the same sort of area but from the island. And I got on last night, I put sort of 10 spawns of bait out and got the rigs into position on a little clear spot in the weed, and lo and behold, I've just had one maybe 20 minutes ago at 15 pound. One of the small stockies, but a bite's a bite on here. I'm very happy to have got one, and it made me feel a bit more confident that the move I've made is a good one. Now the rods have gone back out, and I'm going to be honest, I'm confident for another bite. The main reason that I went in here yesterday is I seen one of the big ones in the edge, and although I'm fishing 10 wraps out, I saw it in the edge off the island. I actually spooked it, and I'm fairly sure it was one they call moonscale. That's the big fish in the lake. Now, the fish was spawned about 3 weeks ago. I'm expecting she's not going to be as big as she normally is. So she was 47. I'm expecting her to maybe not even do 40 pound, but either way, I wouldn't shake it off. So I've seen that fish in the swim. I had it feeding over me last week as well when I did a night in the edge. I got her feeding on an edge spot. So to have now seen it in this swim as well, it's like she's following me around. So I'm really confident that there's a chance of another bite, and let's hope that it's that one. For now though, I'm going to bask in the glory of that. I'm going to make a brew, and I will catch up with you a little bit later on this afternoon if I don't have another fish. If I do have another fish, you'll see that now.
And well, 10 minutes after I did that video clip, the rod rattled off, and I lifted into what I thought was another stocky, real pathetic fight to start with. To be honest, the fish was on the surface, it wasn't doing anything, to the point where I nipped to the side of the swim and I had a wee in the bushes while I was playing this fish, going, it's not a big one. I've pumped it all the way back and I've got it close in, and then it hit the surface, and as they do, it showed itself to me, and the world fell out of me. My knees went, I just went into panic mode. I knew which one it was, and then it started rooking. It was flat rodding me sort of 20 yards along the bottom, big lines of fizz. I'd pump it back, get it on the surface, and itself again do the same. The braid was like grinding through the rings, the clutch was just pouring off. I just couldn't do anything with this fish. But after 15 minutes or so of stalemate, back and forth, I'd gain 10 yards, it'd take 15. Eventually it popped up and I slipped the net under it, and straight away I knew which one it was, but I didn't want to like jinx it and put the shout out, so I've got it in the net, and I ran down to the guy in the peg next door who I'd told I'm gonna have her, and I said I think I've got her, and he came and had a look. We confirmed it was, and yeah, it was mega. This fish was, you know, I've caught big fish in the past, but a 42 pounder that's been a 50, and even at 50 it's a skinny fish. It was as long as you can imagine, it filled the mat, absolute creature of a carp, and a Northwest 40 pounder. You know, as a Northwest lad, I never thought I'd do that. I never thought I was ever going to accomplish that in the northwest of England, not this far north, not far coasting up anyway. Got her up for the photos. I got the old bucket treatment because it was a PB, and yeah, what a mega moment. Since then, I've kept on keeping on consistent with my fishing, because there are another few fish in here I want to catch. One called the Big Common that I actually filmed back in the spring. There's a 46 pounder. That one is definitely on the hit list. And another one called the Long Common that again I was lucky enough to film on the bank. I'm hoping will trip up this autumn. Both of them are due. The weather's right for them. These cold nights are coming in, and I'm confident that if something big doesn't turn up this trip before we leave, something will turn up big over the next few weeks for sure. Well, there we go, end of the session. Unfortunately, nothing else to report. I was hoping for one this morning in here. When that didn't happen, I was hoping for one this afternoon, but we're gonna have to get off before that evening bite time comes in. The sky is absolutely black, and Stephen's got a fair old drive back home from here down to the Midlands. So it's time for me to pack up. I'll definitely be back in the next few weeks once that autumnal weather's right come in for that Big Common. But for now, I'm going to get off home. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to the Avid YouTube channel to keep up to date with further updates. I'll catch you again next time.